Hello and welcome to the Biological Anthropology lecture series. I'm Dr. Richard Jonathan O. Tadurin. Here we explore what it means to be human, biologically, evolutionarily, and behaviorally. Let's begin our journey into the science of humanity. Welcome to Module 3, Human Variation, Growth, and Adaptation. In this module, we investigate how and why humans differ, biologically, developmentally, and adaptively. In this section, we explore human adaptations to climate, altitude, and nutrition, highlighting the 4 levels of human adaptability. Let's revisit what we mean when we talk about adaptation. It's easy to think of adaptation only as something written in our DNA, slow changes passed across thousands of years. But humans are far more flexible than that. We adapt on multiple time scales, from immediate physiological adjustments to cultural innovations that help us cope with our surroundings. When we talk about levels of adaptation, we're really talking about how humans solve environmental challenges using the full toolkit of biology and culture. Let's look at the fastest level, physiological adaptation. Think about what happens when you walk out into the heat. Within minutes, your body starts sweating as a cooling mechanism. Or consider cold environments. Your blood vessels constrict to keep heat near the body's core. These are short-term adjustments, reversible and quick. You might wonder why these responses matter. They matter because they keep us alive in situations where genetic change would be far too slow to help. They're like the body's emergency response system. Now, move one step deeper into development. Developmental adaptation happens as a person grows, based on the environment they experience in childhood. A classic example is chest size at high altitude. Children raised in low oxygen environments often develop larger lung capacities than children at sea level, helping them cope with chronic hypoxia. These developmental changes aren't easily reversible. They become part of the adult body. What's important here is timing. The same environment experienced in adulthood won't produce the same developmental shifts because the body's windows for certain changes close as we mature. Next, let's revisit genetic adaptation. This is the slowest level, shaped by natural selection across many generations. Traits like skin pigmentation, which reflects long-term responses to UV radiation, show us how populations evolve to their local environments. The sickle cell allele, associated with malaria resistance in certain regions, is another example of how selection can maintain traits that offer survival advantages under specific conditions. Genetic adaptation tells the long-term story of how populations have persisted through historical environmental pressures. But humans don't rely on biology alone. Cultural adaptation may be the most powerful and immediate tool we have. Culture allows us to respond to challenges without waiting for genes or development to catch up. Clothing, shelter, fire, food preparation, and social organization, all of these buffer us from environmental extremes. For instance, cultural strategies for staying warm in Arctic climates, such as layered clothing and insulated dwellings, reduce the physiological burden on the body. In hot regions, architectural designs that promote airflow and shade help cool communities without requiring biological adaptation at all. Culture lets us shape our surroundings instead of letting the environment shape us entirely. What's fascinating is how these levels work together. Take high-altitude populations. They show genetic adaptations related to oxygen use, developmental adaptations in chest and lung structure, physiological adjustments like increased breathing rate, and cultural practices that reduce physical strain. No single level explains their success. It's the layering that makes human adaptability so effective. So, as we think about human adaptation, try to imagine it not as a single process, but as a series of strategies working at different speeds. Some changes happen in seconds, some over childhood, some across centuries, and some through cultural innovation at any moment. This multi-level responsiveness is what allows humans to inhabit environments as different as the Arctic tundra, the Andes, equatorial forests, and tropical coastlines. It shows us that human variation isn't random. It's the product of bodies and cultures solving the challenges of living on a diverse planet. Let's revisit why climate plays such a central role in shaping human biology. Our species originated in Africa, but over tens of thousands of years, humans spread into deserts, rainforests, subarctic zones, and high mountain ranges. Each of these environments presented its own set of challenges: heat, cold, dryness, humidity, low oxygen, and the human body had to respond using the full range of adaptive strategies you learned earlier. When we talk about climate and physical adaptations, we're really talking about how humans solved those challenges through physiology, development, genetics, and culture working together. Let's look at heat first, because heat stress is one of the oldest environmental pressures our species has faced. Imagine standing under intense sun in a hot, open savanna. Your body has to prevent overheating, and one of the most effective ways it does this is through sweating. Humans are exceptional sweaters. Our ability to release heat through evaporation is far greater than that of most mammals. Long limbs and a leaner body shape also help dissipate heat by increasing surface area. You might wonder where these patterns come from. They reflect long-term adaptation to hot climates, reinforced by physiological responses like vasodilation, where blood vessels widen to release heat. Even developmental factors matter. Growing up in a hot environment can fine-tune sweating efficiency and heat tolerance. Cold environments present a different set of challenges. Instead of shedding heat, the body must conserve it. In cold climates, we see shorter, stockier body builds with more mass relative to surface area. This pattern aligns with Bergmann's and Allen's rules, principles observed across mammals. Bodies in cold climates tend to be larger and have shorter limbs to retain warmth. Physiologically, the body responds through vasoconstriction, narrowing blood vessels to limit heat loss, and through shivering, which generates heat through muscle activity. Some populations also show non-shivering thermogenesis, a metabolic process that increases heat production. Now, this part is important. Even though these patterns appear genetically influenced, culture plays a huge role. Clothing, housing, and fire made cold environments survivable long before long-term genetic adaptations took hold. Altitude introduces another challenge entirely: low oxygen. If you've ever traveled to a high mountain region, you may have felt lightheaded or short of breath. That's your body making immediate physiological adjustments, increasing your breathing rate and heart rate to compensate for reduced oxygen. But populations that have lived at high altitude for many generations show deeper adaptations. For example, Andean highlanders often have larger chest cavities and greater lung volume, a developmental adaptation shaped during childhood. Tibetan highlanders, on the other hand, exhibit genetic differences that allow more efficient oxygen use without producing excessive red blood cells. These adaptations highlight something remarkable. Different populations can arrive at different solutions to the same environmental challenge. It's a vivid reminder that human evolution is not a single path. It's a collection of pathways shaped by local history and biology. Let's shift to sunlight, because UV radiation is another powerful climatic factor. Skin pigmentation varies widely across human populations, and this variation follows a clear clinal pattern. Near the equator, darker skin protects against intense UV radiation, which can damage DNA and deplete folate, an essential nutrient for reproduction. Farther from the equator, where sunlight is weaker, lighter skin allows the body to synthesize enough vitamin D. This balance, protecting folate while enabling vitamin D production, helps explain global patterns of skin color. You might wonder why these gradients are so smooth. It's because human populations have moved, mixed, and adapted over time, producing continuous transitions rather than sharp boundaries. Humidity also affects the body in subtle ways. In hot but humid environments, sweating becomes less efficient because the air is already saturated with moisture. Cultural adaptations, like airflow-optimized housing or loose clothing, become essential. Meanwhile, in dry environments, Physiological adaptations that conserve water become more important, and cultural strategies such as water storage and timing of work activities play a major role. As we consider these different climates, notice how rarely a single factor explains a population's traits. Long limbs in equatorial groups reflect heat dissipation, but they also reflect developmental and cultural histories. High-altitude lung capacity reflects both genetics and childhood environment. Even skin color reflects multiple pressures acting together: sunlight, diet, migration, and mixing of populations through time. What ties all of this together is the idea that human biology does not evolve in isolation. It evolves in context. Climate is part of that context, but so are culture, technology, and social structure. When humans entered cold environments, for example, they didn't wait for evolution to reshape their bodies. They built shelters, created clothing, and developed food storage strategies. Those cultural innovations changed the selective pressures themselves. The same is true in hot or high-altitude regions. Cultural practices buffer the environment, influencing how much genetic or developmental adaptation is needed. So when we talk about climate and physical adaptations, we're really talking about the constant negotiation between the human body and the world around it. Climate challenges us, and we respond through biology and culture alike. That's why human variation looks the way it does: fluid, overlapping, and deeply interconnected with the environments that shaped it. Let's revisit why nutrition is central to understanding human adaptation and variation. Food isn't just fuel, it's information. It shapes how bodies grow, how immune systems develop, how metabolism functions, and how populations respond to ecological challenges. When anthropologists talk about nutrition, we're talking about a biological pathway that connects environment, culture, and health in a very direct and measurable way. Let's look at the basics. Humans require a balance of macronutrients: carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and a wide range of micronutrients like vitamins and minerals. When any of these are insufficient or imbalanced, the effects ripple through the entire life course. A child who lacks adequate protein may fail to reach expected height. A pregnant person with inadequate micronutrients may give birth to a low-weight infant. And even adults who appear outwardly healthy may experience metabolic consequences from chronic dietary shortages or excesses. Nutrition is not just an issue of biology. It's tied to systems of access, economy, and culture. Many populations face what we call the double burden of malnutrition, where undernutrition and obesity occur side by side. Think about how this happens. As global food systems shift, processed foods often become more available than nutrient-rich traditional diets. At the same time, some communities still struggle with chronic food shortages. This creates a landscape where bodies are simultaneously deprived and overfed, lacking essential micronutrients while consuming excess calories. You might wonder how this links to global health. Nutrition sits at the center of many health disparities. Undernutrition leads to stunting, weakened immune systems, and increased vulnerability to disease. Overnutrition contributes to rising rates of type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and cardiovascular disease, conditions that were far less common in many populations only a few generations ago. These trends don't emerge randomly. They reflect rapid changes in lifestyle, food availability, work patterns, and cultural expectations around diet. Think about the concept of the thrifty genotype. This idea suggests that bodies adapted for energy efficiency during periods of scarcity may struggle in modern environments of abundance. Whether or not every detail of the hypothesis holds up, the broader point remains valuable. Human biology evolved under very different ecological pressures than the ones we experience today. When the environment shifts faster than genetic adaptation can keep up, health consequences follow. Let's look at an example. In many regions undergoing urbanization, people shift from physically demanding jobs and whole food diets to more sedentary lifestyles and processed foods. Within a single generation, rates of obesity and metabolic disease begin to climb. This isn't because the biology of the population suddenly changed. It's because the food environment changed, and the body is responding in ways that once made sense but now create health risks. Cultural practices also shape nutritional outcomes. Food taboos, traditional cuisines, agricultural systems, and patterns of sharing or storing food all influence what nutrients are available and how they're distributed within a community. These practices can buffer against environmental stress, but they can also create vulnerabilities when conditions change. So when we think about nutrition and global health, we're really thinking about how human bodies navigate a rapidly changing world. Diets that evolved to support survival in one context may contribute to disease in another. And because nutrition affects growth, immune function, reproduction, and longevity, it becomes a key lens for understanding human variation in both biological and cultural terms. In short, nutrition links individuals to environments, past to present, and biology to society. It's one of the clearest examples of how human adaptability can become both a strength and a challenge in the modern world. Let's revisit what we uncovered in this section. We examined how humans respond to climate, altitude, and nutritional pressures through a layered set of adaptations: genetic, developmental, physiological, and cultural. Each level works at its own pace, and together they give humans an astonishing capacity to thrive in environments ranging from the Arctic to the equator and from sea level to the world's highest settlements. As we moved through these examples, one theme kept emerging. Human adaptation is rarely a single story. It's not just about genes or childhood development or moment-to-moment physiology. It's about all of these processes interacting with cultural strategies that buffer and reshape the environment. Now, this part is important. Culture doesn't sit outside biology. It participates in adaptation. Fire, clothing, shelter, food storage, and social organization change the conditions under which bodies grow and evolve. That means human variation is always a blend of what biology provides and what culture enables. You might wonder what this means for understanding human diversity today. It means that traits we observe across populations are not signs of separate types of humans, but records of how different groups have solved different ecological challenges. High-altitude lung capacity, body proportions suited to heat or cold, patterns of pigmentation, and dietary responses all reflect long histories of interaction between humans and their environments. So, as we conclude this section, keep in mind that adaptation is an ongoing dialogue. The human body is never a passive recipient of climate or diet. It is always negotiating, adjusting, and finding solutions. That flexibility is one of our species' defining strengths. First, let's revisit the journey we took in this module. We started by unpacking the history of the race concept, seeing how early attempts to classify humans into rigid categories fell apart once scientific evidence revealed the fluid, continuous nature of human variation. Then we shifted to growth and development, tracing how bodies change from prenatal life through adulthood, and how those changes are shaped not just by biology, but by environment, nutrition, disease, and stress. Finally, we explored human adaptation, how people respond to heat, cold, altitude, and shifting diets, using a combination of genetic inheritance, developmental pathways, physiological flexibility, and cultural ingenuity. Now, this part is important. When you put all these pieces together, a much clearer picture emerges. Human variation is not a set of boxes or boundaries. It's a record of adaptation, across landscapes, across lifespans, and across generations. You might wonder why this matters beyond anthropology. It matters because understanding variation accurately helps us recognize the shared humanity beneath our differences, while also appreciating the remarkable ways people and populations respond to their environments. Think about what you've seen in this module: a lung shaped by high-altitude childhood, a body proportion suited to heat or cold, a growth pattern influenced by nutrition and disease. These aren't signs of separate types of humans. They're evidence of flexibility, resilience, and history. So, as we close Module 3, carry this with you. Human variation is meaningful, but it is not dividing. It's the story of how one species met the world's challenges in many different, ingenious ways. Thank you for joining this lecture. I'm Dr. Richard Jonathan O. Tadurin. I hope this session deepened your understanding of biological anthropology. Keep exploring what it means to be human. See you soon.